So we need to face up to one or two realities. We are skint, and it's getting worse.
High taxation, the highest taxes for 70 years. And that's why we're confirming what we call the Great British Tax Cut. £40 billion. The way to pay for this is to rearrange the way Bank of England organises the interest, the debt payments that it makes on all of what we call the quantitative easing.
Joseph Barton, Joey Barton.
Joey Barton has lost his libel showdown in court with Jeremy Vine, and he called him a bike nonce.
Bike nonce.
All right. Bow, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Back to another episode of Abe Thompson and Other Disappointments. Your twice, sometimes thrice weekly delve, nay cannonball dive bomb into the worlds of dystopia, politics, news, and all things awful. I am your host of this 45-minute long, sometimes an hour long gallivant through the fields of gallows humour, as we once again try to make sense of the senseless, and indeed as I try to wrap my darkness around your light. How are we doing today, people? What's going on? Big doff for the cap to the Patreons, to the YouTube community backers. Have we got their names? Should we put their names up on the screen again? Where's their names gone? Here we go. Oh, there we go. Wonderful people that they are. Supporters that, as I always say, give my funny bone a funny boner. What's going on out there, guys? Is there anything else I need to promote? Is there some other way I need to set out my stall? Or are we okay now to proceed and start, diving into the abject nonsense that is modern politics, that is the news of the last few days? I suppose I should talk a little bit about events that are coming up. So I've got, for Patreon backers, for YouTube community backers, we've got the in-person meetup. Guys, that's happening on Saturday, the 6th of July. So if you fancy coming down to that, if you could be in London on Saturday, the 6th of July, you could come down, you could meet me, the rest of the Patreons. It's a good time, man. Like we've done a couple of them now. And I always end up really hammered. Shamelessly, completely devoid of dignity, dribbling drunk is the sort of state that I end up in. But it's a good time, man. It's nice. Like what I'm gleaning from these events when I do organise them, is that everyone's on a similar wavelength. Like everyone's got stuff in common. We're all a bit geeky. Obviously, we're all into politics and comment and a bit of satire. Everyone gets on. It's good. It's a good time. So if you want to come to that is on Saturday, the 6th of July. And also, couple of days before that, obviously, is the election, guys. Thursday, the 4th of July, is the general election, in case you've been living under a rock for the last few weeks. And on that night, myself, Super Tansky, Josh from the Movement Forward, Sean from Drowned in Sound, Marina Perkis, Gemma Forte, there's a whole bunch of us, clearly. We are all doing a party, which there may or may not still be tickets available for when this episode comes out. It's going to go out to Patreons first. They're going to get the scoop, the first dibs on the ticket link. And then it's going to go out to you guys. And if there's still some tickets, there's only capacity is 300. So I actually think it's going to sell out super quickly. But if it's still available, I'm going to put a ticket link on there for you guys also. Right. Okay. What are we going to talk about today or tonight? It's Tuesday night at time of recording. What shall we delve into? People of the booge. So The first thing I wanted to talk about tonight was this new era that we appear to have found ourselves in now. And I was not expecting it. I did not see this one coming. You know, I know that we live in crazy, unpredictable times. You know, the sort of times where reality TV stars can become president of the United States and then attempt to overthrow the government of the United States. And then, as though that weren't disgusting enough, they can then come back again, get found guilty of abusing campaign finance, and still be taken seriously in their aspirations to become president of the United States. So we live in crazy times. We live in times where Vine stars, YouTubers who got famous dumping integrityless videos where they fake being colorblind and then they regain full sight. I'm talking about, like, what's their names again? The two kids, two brothers. They're not twins, but they do look really like Jake Paul and Logan Paul, right? This is how they got famous. On Vine, they did these silly little sketches. And then on YouTube, they upload the worst type of videos. Including one where I think Logan Paul went to... didn't he go to Japan or something? He went to Japan and then he walked through, like, suicide woods, and then they found a dead body, like, hanging from a tree, and they still posted it, you know? They, like, these are the kinds of... And now they're being taken serious. One of them's out there being photographed with Donald Trump. Like, is he going to become a Republican senator? Who knows? Who knows? Probably. And meanwhile, the other one was, until very recently, about to fight Mike Tyson. Iron Mike Tyson, from the late 80s and 90s, heavyweight world champion, was coming back into the ring as an old man to fight one of the Logan Paul brothers. Jake Paul, isn't it? Not the Logan Paul brothers. Jake Paul. The whole thing is... It's an insane world that we're living in. Everything is very unpredictable, is what I'm trying to say, in a very long, drawn-out fashion. But what I wanted to touch on was a sort of a story of refreshingness, if that's even a word. It's not a word, is it? Well, it is now. I've just made it up. But it's a story that reassures you in its predictability. Because I basically predicted it. I'm really cutting myself out a new career here as some sort of political or dystopian Nostradamus, am I not? You know, first it was, you know, quite infamously now, predicting that Nigel Farage would come back at this particular point and he would be Reform leader and it would be right at the beginning of the campaign and blah, 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 you know. I've made enough of a big deal out of that now, I think. You know, I got followed by an IEA economist yesterday because I followed him because I wanted to see what he had to say about Nigel Farage's economic policy. Right? And the reason that I wanted to see what he had to say was because as an IEA fellow or alumni, I sort of assumed that he would be very supportive of it. You know? Like, these are the guys, these are the sort of, I don't want to say shadowy figures, because I'm sure he would not categorise himself as that. His name's Julian Jessup, is it? I think. But these are the individuals who work in Tufton Street or are heavily associated with it, and these are the guys who celebrated, if not directly influenced, the Kwesi Kwarteng and Liz Truss mini-budget that was so chaotic and infamous now in the fiscal history books. And so I wanted to see what this guy had to say about Nigel Farage and Richard Tice's economic policy. Because if we cast our minds back, dear listeners, if we spool back to those gaudy heights of the Liz Truss premiership, if we go back to, when was it? Was it 2022 when all of that kicked off, or was it 2023? But Nigel Farage, at the time, he was like, this is the best Conservative budget in decades, or, like, you know, words to that effect. He was very excited. And so what you can glean from that is that, you know, he's very supportive of a low tax agenda, of a neo-Thatcherite approach to fiscal management. And so I thought, okay, well, now Farage and Tice are stepping to the fore with their own manifesto, contract. And their approach is very similar to the Truss Kwarteng one. They are also talking about radical tax cuts, about slashing taxes, putting more money back in your pocket, making work pay, guys. And so I wanted to see, you know, if they're aiming to be this radical, and having lived through the Truss Kwarteng chaos, what would a Tufton Street fellow like this Julian Jessup guy, I really hope that's his name, because if there's some other economist out there called Julian Jessup now who hasn't backed the Truss or the Farage stuff, he's going to be like, whoa. Do you know what kind of problems you're causing me here? I was respected until your little clip went out. And so I followed him, and then he followed me back, and he, like, I guess the first tweet that he sort of, like, you know, when you follow someone and then it shows you, like, one of their tweets, I guess the first thing that he saw of mine was that prediction tweet about Nigel Farage. And he replied back, he was like, you get a follow purely on the basis of this prediction. So I wanted to see what he would make of Farage and Tice's fiscal policy. Because if I just spool back now, not quite so far back as the Truss Kwarteng thing, but if I just step back a few days, in fact, actually, let's step back sort of about 3 or 4 weeks, right? Even before Farage became leader, I was like, do you know what? Their tax policy is absolutely insane. Have you seen their tax policy? Read their policies. Everyone else is so busy going like, don't let him come back. Don't let him stand in Clacton because he's racist, which is fine to scrutinise. That is absolutely fine. To focus on his past, on unfortunate comments that he may have made, on his attitudes, his well-documented attitudes, and, you know, the various actually quite nasty things that other people say that he has said in private. It's fine to focus on that stuff, but let's give as much attention and scrutiny to the weird lunacy that they're attempting to apply to what anyone sane in the industry would refer to as a manifesto, but they term and market as a contract. You know, let's not let them off the hook for their insanity purely on the basis that they also happen to be racist. Like, since when did racism get anybody a get out of jail free card? You're supposed to go to jail for it. It's not supposed to let you off. You know, it's like, Mr. Thompson, could I have a word with you? Just 2 seconds. Yeah, what seems to be the problem? Right, you applied for a mortgage, £3 million you wanted to borrow? Yeah, is there an issue of some description? Yeah, what did you say your salary was? You said you were earning £3 million a year. Yeah. Right, it's just that your pay slips are, they're wildly different to that. Oh, right, do you check those, do you? Yeah, there is some due diligence left in the city. They've deregulated a lot, but there is some checks and balances. Right, okay. All right, well, I'll just take it. No, well, the thing is, Mr. Thompson, this is actually financial fraud. You're trying to defraud the bank. So we're going to have to call the authority. Oh, man. Oh, wait. Actually, it's okay, because do you know what? Look, if you just look down the bottom of the application, I've actually scribbled the N-word. Oh, well, why didn't you say it? Oh, you're totally off the hook then. Run along, you silly goose. Racism is not supposed to be your get out of jail free card. So, anyway, I thought, when I was reading through their policies some weeks ago now, I thought this is going to blow up, man, at some point. And I was tweeting about it. I was saying, has anybody actually read this this batshit policy about stopping paying interest payments on the quantitative easing loans? Like, has anybody actually read this? This is insanity. We're just gonna stop paying the interest on the loan. I mean, financial services is our bread and butter industry. With the global financial centre is New York, London, Singapore, and London. The Bank of England is just going to go, do you know what? Might stop paying it. I might just see just categorise it as a COVID loan and write it off. Nobody will care. It's fine. What's the worst that could happen? Truss and Kwarteng dancing in the background while London burns to the ground. It's insane. So this was like weeks ago. I was reading these policies, ringing the alarm bells on Twitter. And then the other day, there was a thing about, like, from, how like different reform instances or, groupings, I don't know what the word is. What's the word? Like in each constituency, there'll be another group of reform organisers, grassroots people, right? And one of them posted a thing about, the Conservatives being high tax. The Tories want to keep your taxes high. Labour want to keep your taxes high. And it was a really interesting exchange. And I'm going to take you through it now, guys. So this is from Reform Darlington. Okay, at Reform Darlow, it says, apparently low taxes are in the Conservatives' DNA. Yet here we are with the highest taxes in 70 years. Something else is in the Tories' DNA, it says. And then it's got a gif of Pinocchio. So they're suggesting that the Tories are telling porkies, which they are, sort of. So what happens next? You get the gist of it, right? Tories claim to be low tax. Reform is saying, but we've got the highest taxes forever, right? This could be a Labour tweet, really, couldn't it? Anyway, so that's the first tweet. Pinocchio gif. Then I come in. I say, okay, so what's your plan for paying off the national debt then? Right? Because I know that I bang on about this stuff, but maybe for the benefit of new listeners, basically the reason that the taxes are so high is because most of your tax money goes on servicing the national debt, because successive governments have borrowed loads of money. They sell it to people like bond investors, right? They borrow all this money and then they spend that just keeping the country running. And this debt has just accrued and accrued and accrued. And now we're in a weird situation where most of your tax money goes on servicing debt, but also they borrow more just to pay the debt. It's so irresponsible from the party of fiscal responsibility. So here are Reform suggesting playfully that this is some sort of choice then, right? Apparently low taxes are in the Conservatives' DNA, yet here we are with the highest taxes in 70 years. The implication being that the Conservatives are choosing to tax us super high, rather than the truth, which is we're servicing the national debt, and whoever gets into power is going to have to continue to service the national debt unless we get growth, right? Still with me? Good. So then I come in, I say, so what's your plan for paying off the national debt? Then this Reform candidate steps in. His name's Trevor Lloyd-Jones, and he is the Reform UK candidate for Aldershot, which some of you may be aware is a town, I want to say close to my heart. I don't know if that's the right way of describing it. I frequently describe it as the shittest town in Hampshire. And it's all around me. I can say it because I live here. This is like my N-word. I can call it a shithole. I can use this vernacular because this is my wheelhouse, right? Okay. So Trev comes in and he says, I said, how are you going to pay off the national debt then, right? So you're going to lower taxes. How are you going to pay off the debt? He says, well, with economic growth. He says, the government from 1980 to 1990, which was the Thatcher years, right, was a tax-cutting government. And in that time, tax receipts tripled. And that was the last time we had a budget surplus. Smart tax cuts pay for themselves, says Trevor. Now, I just want to tear you away from Trevor. Just drag your attention away from the fiscal political news that Trevor Lloyd-Jones possesses. Just for a minute, if you may. To remind you that we didn't really have a national debt back then. How do these people not know this stuff? I know this stuff and I am a fucking idiot. You know? Economic growth rate. The government from 1980 to 1990 was a tax-cutting government. Yeah, because they didn't have to pay the national debt. I think the national debt was something like 40% back then. Can you imagine the freedom you would have to cut taxes if your national debt was like over half reduced from where it is now? It's 100% of GDP. Oh. So I'm just like, my jaw is on the floor as he's saying this stuff. Right. Smart tax cuts pay for themselves. Hashtag Reform UK. So I said, okay, so you're going to cut taxes. Good stuff, Trev. Good stuff. How are you going to initially pay for them? I mean, you say if you cut these taxes, they will come back in the form of receipts and they'll pay for themselves. Smart tax cuts pay for themselves. That's what you said, right? But initially, how are you going to pay for them? How is Trevor or his bosses, Richard Tice and Nigel Farage, how are they supposing that they are going to afford to suddenly not have that tax money that they need every quarter to pay the fucking interest bill? I said, uncosted or costed? How are you going to initially pay for them? He goes, oh, costed. Costed. If you read our contract with the people, our contract with you, it's fiscally neutral, he says. All the budget decisions, costings, and economic modelling is in the back section. Very helpful. Thank you, Trev. Economic growth is an odd concept to most people because we haven't seen it for so long, he says. And I said, interesting. Okay, so I did. I did go away and I read their contract with the people. And I responded. I said, that's interesting, Trev. Thank you. You seem to have earmarked just under £100 billion in economic adjustments. 100 billion. I said, but you're paying for that, or a chunk of it, by bailing on quantitative easing interest payments, right? So then you're going to trigger a banking exodus and you're going to trigger bonds chaos. Why would anybody buy a bond? In the UK, like a 10-year or 25-year bond investment, why would anybody put their money in GBPLC when we're the only cat on the block that's playing this casino gambling nonsense? Why wouldn't they just look at Italy or France or America and just go, yeah, actually, do you know what? I've got $200,000. I might just put it in the country over there that isn't putting it all on 28 red, like some sort of addict with everyone else's money that's going to trigger another mini budget chaos, meltdown, mortgages exploding, the Bank of England having to invent money to buy back the bonds, to synthesize demand, to stop the value of them just imploding. Why would you invest in the UK? So the UK would then not be able to borrow in an environment where we have to fucking borrow because we've got no growth? Is this really what you're suggesting? Now, there's a load of stories going around today about, like, how do they vet their candidates? You know, they got, like, this guy over here says, like, oh, actually, I think Hitler had some great ideas. I've got a lot of time for Hitler. Hitler was right. They've got that fucking guy. They've got this guy over here who's just like, yeah, I was ex-BNP, and do you know what? I bloody love reform. Send all the immigrants back home! And then they have to sack him. And it's not like 2 isolated cases. It's like 10, 50, 20 or even, like, people have just, like, come in as candidates and immediately got the boot. People are like, what are their vetting procedures like? How do they ensure that somebody is suitable for the Reform Party? I'm like, I don't know. Do they forcibly wrap a Tesco bag around their head with masking tape and starve them of oxygen for 7 minutes? Is that what happens? Do they sit them down with Nige and force them to drink 7 pints of real ale until they're hammered, and then pop them in a mini Leyland with no seatbelts and smash them into a wall and shatter their frontal lobe and cut them out? How do you feel about taxes, Marky? No tax ideology. Perfect. Here's your Twitter account. Get on the podium. So anyway, I said, yes, let's get back to this, shall we? I said, interesting, you seem to have earmarked just under 100 billion in economic adjustments, but you're paying for a chunk of that by bailing on QE interest payments. So I said, you know, bank exodus, bonds chaos, you know. Do you have any economists outside of Tufton Street, I asked, that support this idea? Which I think is a valid question. Is it not? I'd just like to know if these radical tax plans are supported by respected economists. So, how do you think he responded to that? Dear listeners, dear viewers, people of the booge, how do you think he responded to that quite reasonable question? Look, if you're thinking about bailing on QE interest payments, if you're thinking about replicating a Truss Kwarteng low-tax, ideologically driven policy, and that sent my mortgage ballooning, if you are going down this road, would it be too much to ask if there are any economists that sit outside the realms of Tufton Street who professionally back your tax policy? Please, could you enlighten me? How do you think he responded to that? Do we think that he said, actually, I can see your point, Aid, and those are valid concerns, you know? If I scan back through your Twitter account, I can totally see that you were incredibly scared when your mortgage payments doubled through no fault of your own. I can understand where that concern might come from, and that before you commit to your support or supporting reform, that you might want a little bit of reassurance. So I'm here to tell you that this person and that person and this body, they all back our tax plans. Do we think that that's how he responded? Fucking of course he didn't. Of course he didn't. He's reform. I'm asking for substance from people who deal in symbolism. What did he say? He said, I said, do you have any economists outside of Tufton Street that support this? He says, oh, sorry, I didn't realise you were a socialist and economically incompetent. Just no acknowledgement, no response to the substance. Remember, I haven't been rude to him at all. All I've asked him is, are there any economists that support this? I didn't realise that you were a socialist and economically incompetent, he says. So I said, so is that a no, Trevor? Is that a no? He says, you don't seem to have even read it. I had read it. I responded to it, and he called me a socialist and economically incompetent. He says, you don't even seem to have read it. Of course reform works with independent econometrics and economic institutions. Over and out, he says. Cutting me off. So I responded again. I said, can you name any that aren't the IFS? He says, sorry, I don't have time for troublemakers and doomsters like yourself, which blew my mind. guys. Because can we just talk about troublemaking and doomsters for a second? Let's talk about troublemaking, shall we? Let's talk about Tufton Street ideology fueling the Truss and Kwarteng mini-budget that exploded the bond markets and caused the banks to hike interest rates that sent my personal mortgage payments doubling. £900 a month. That's like somebody else's salary, isn't it? And I'm the troublemaker. I'm just a doomster for focusing on that folly. Oh, can't you move on, Aid? Why are you dwelling? I'd like my £900 a month back, please. Oh, you and your figures and your substance and your experts. If you need £900 a month, Aid, extra, you need to work harder, get a better paid job, cut down on the Netflix and the avocados. What if I told you it was a result of private school fees getting VAT lumped on the top? Then would you give a shit? My mortgage explodes by £900 a month. Hold your nerve. There's nothing we could do. Well, that's all sorted by the Bank of Ireland. It's nothing really to do with us. Interest rates come down. Oh, we'd like some credit for that, please. Where's my fucking blowjob? Right, okay. Inflation spikes. It's nothing I wish there was some way that we could help you to pay off that £900 a month that you never budgeted for, that now you're saddled with. I wish there was something we could do, but just hold your nerve. Oh, my private school fees are probably going to go up by £400 or £500. Oh my God! Front page of the Telegraph and the Express and the Mail. Whatever shall be done about the private school fees. God. Anyway, back to Trev. He says, sorry, I don't have time for troublemakers and doomsters like yourself. I said, I'm an Aldershot voter, Trev. I don't know if he just thought I was some, internet troll or whatever, which is, people could accurately portray me as that sometimes, I think. How I choose to spend my lunchtimes. Clapping back to shameless charlatan chances on Twitter. But I am also concurrently an Aldershot voter. So he doesn't have time for doomsters like me. I said, I'm an Aldershot voter, right? I'm interested in your economic policy. I said I'm just understandably concerned that slashing a load of taxes based on IFS dogma might make my mortgage explode, Trev. Again. I said, what can you offer me to convince me otherwise, to put my mind at rest about this? And he says, it's not really IFS dogma, it's fiscally neutral, as I said, which means the bond markets will be positive towards it. It's akin to the 1980 to 1990 government, which was a tax-cutting government. He says tax receipts tripled during that decade, right? Well, we've covered that. He says another important part of the plan is raising the tax allowance to 20k, which will help 1 million people out of benefits and into real rewarding jobs and better lives, he says. Because they're nice people, these reform people. Like they just want to improve your life by leaving the ECHR and trashing your workers' rights. Just all heart, aren't they? He says Labour talk about dealing with poverty and social justice, so why are they not helping the lowest paid in this way? He says, batting it back to Labour. So I said, it's only fiscally neutral because you want to bail on QE interest payments, which could easily cause market panic, no? You'd end up with more tax receipts, but market panic tanking pensions. Bonds would be in freefall. Mortgages would be up again. People would have an extra £100 in their pocket. Yay! But they'd need another £800 for their mortgage. Go! Right? So I'm having fun with him a little bit. I said, do you see my point? I'll ask again. Is there a named, respected economist that is not based in Tufton Street who supports your economic policy? And since then, there has been no response, guys. I And I mean, this is my point, really. Like, whenever we're talking about reform, it's like, yes, we scrutinise Nigel Farage for his, colourful language that he's used in the past, allegedly. Yes, there's a place for that. But actually, he's way more dangerous than that. Like, if there's a racist in London, in Westminster, who says some unfortunate things, yeah, that should be dealt with. But that's not the sort of thing where the ripple effects could come out and then touch you, your wallet, your savings account, your mortgage. The sorts of policies that he's talking about, that he's amplifying, that he's trying to get taken seriously again, even though they've already been tried. And it resulted in that mini-budget chaos. These are the things that could actually explode your financial situation into more chaos and mayhem. Like, I don't know exactly what's going through their minds, what their master plan is, or whatever. But to me, it seems quite obvious that their actual end game, and this is just my opinion, I don't know this for sure. But from what I've seen, my sense is that their end game is that they want to leave the ECHR, tank workers' rights, low tax ultra ideology. They want to make life immeasurably easier for the rich, for the super wealthy. Meanwhile, everyone else with the workers' rights and protections will have a way harder time of it as a result of the policies that they're trying to shop to us now. But it's sold to the masses because most people out there don't, obsess over the news like you and I do, perhaps. Most people just wake up on a Monday morning and they go into the office, they answer a few queries from Sandra in accounts, and then they just try to get through the weekly team meeting about this, and then they just want to go home and watch Love Island. That is most people out there. So racism, the xenophobia, and all of that, that's just the con. That is just the con. That's the thing they use to lure in the masses. The people who operate on a base level of instinct and hate. The racism is just the billboard, the sell to pull people in. It's not what I actually like. The racism is just a titty dance, right? They bring you in with, right? But make no mistake, right? You will leave the strip club with full balls and an empty wallet. It's like, and yes, I apologise for putting the mental image of Nigel Farage giving you a titty dance in your head, but whenever you tune into this show, you know what you're signing up for, don't you? Clumsy metaphors are my shtick. Let's move on. Should we move on? All right. So, the other story I wanted to touch on tonight is a recent development in the Joey Barton saga. Now, I think I touched on this about 3 or 4 weeks ago when I was bigging myself up about the Farage prediction stuff, right? As another example of something that I'd called out, called it! That sort of thing. And this all dates back, just a little bit of context, just in case you are a new listener. A little bit of context. Joey Barton, I think, criticised heavily female football commentators, right? As not being up to the job or something. And he had a bit of a meltdown about it on Twitter. And Jeremy Vine invited him on his show on Channel 5, the Jeremy Vine show. I don't think he accepted the invite. And then I think I'm right in saying this, Jeremy Vine then shared his opinion about the Joey Barton thing. And then that was enough for Barton to then go like, basically go fuck yourself, bike nonce. That's what he called him, right? Jeremy Vine, obviously very famous for sharing, near scrapes on the roads. He's a cyclist. Loads of videos every day about, inconsiderate drivers cutting him up, all sorts of dangerous situations. We should all be more cyclist aware, that sort of vibe. So Barton calls him bike nonce. And I think I said something along the lines of, Joey Barton is about to learn a very expensive lesson in defamation law, one that could cost him as little as £100,000, something like that. And at the time, loads of people were like, no, you can say like stuff. He's not calling him a nonce. He's calling him a bike nonce. And I'm like, I don't think that's going to hold up. I think if you call someone any kind of nonce, I think there has to be. I mean, one of the reasons I feel so comfortable calling Prince Andrew a nonce burger is because he paid a woman who accused him of being a nonce. He paid her £10 million. So we know that he's scared of that coming out in court. It's like, I'm not a nonce. Okay, well, let's take this to court then, Andy. So anyway, Joey Barton has had to pin something today. And this is on Sky News. He's had to pin something to his Twitter account. It says, Jeremy Vine now says Joey Barton's payout is not even the final outcome of this libel case, right? Because here is, let me read you Vine's tweet about this earlier, because it's quite interesting, guys. It says, statement regarding Joey Barton. The news of Joey Barton's apology and commitment to pay damages and costs is not the final outcome of this case. After 5 defamatory tweets, my lawyer offered Barton a chance to settle, pay £75,000 plus my costs and make an apology, but he ignored that offer and posted more disgusting tweets about me, even publishing my home address to his followers. It says, when I took my case to the High Court, a judge ruled that 10 of the tweets that I complained of were defamatory, and having lost, Barton has returned to the offer that we made after the original 5, right? So just let's focus on that for a minute. He made 5 defamatory, libelous tweets, and Vine's lawyer is like, you know, at that early stage, he's like, yeah, 75 grand, right? For these problematic tweets, only 5 of them, 75 grand, and this all goes away, Joey. You know, you say you're all about free speech and you can say whatever you like because you got loads of money. Well, 75 grand, and we'll make this go away, sunshine. And he ignores it, and then presumably his lawyer phones him, and he's like, yeah, you know the strategy that we talked about, where you said just ignore it, and it will go away. Well, apparently it's not. It's not great news, Mr. Barton. I mean, I think we hoped that it would just go away, but actually it's doubled. Like, it was 5 tweets, it's 10 now, so probably the damages are going to be quite substantial. Yes, I mean, yeah, don't call me that. Don't call me. Yes, I'm a lawyer. Yes, I deal with incredibly morally repugnant individuals, but I draw the line at swearing. Do not call me the C word, Joey. And so, anyway, so now they've lost the High Court case, right, for the 10 problematic tweets. Now Vine is saying that Barton is just returning to that original offer. Right? Like, it's like, well, you know, we lost the case, but I'm sure it's fine if we just go back to the original 75 and the public apology, isn't it? They probably, yeah, I'm sure, yeah, it's fine. He won't be greedy, will he? Yeah. He says, there has therefore been a parallel action for tweets 6 to 10, and Barton will pay further damages for these. A number of other steps, including statements made in court by way of apology, are still to be taken, and Barton has agreed to pay my legal costs of all of the claims. So it's fuck around and fine now. I like that. But it's also, there's an element of weird to this, isn't there? There's something strange about an individual who makes 5 libelous tweets, then does more. And then when they lose the court case at the High Court, then they revert back to the original offer. The first step, like, who's your fucking lawyer? Lionel Hutz? Like, what are you doing? It's like that scene in Arrested Development, like where his, like the dad's lawyer tells him something, and then he's in the prison visitation room. He's like, yeah, apparently you can't charge a husband and a wife with the same crime if you don't know who did it. And then the guy's like, I don't think that's an actual law. I don't. And then the guy's like, God, I have the worst fucking attorney. So yeah, I mean, look, there's an element of Schadenfreude, isn't there, with these people, because it's the Boris Johnsonism of the legal world, isn't it? It's the Michael Goveism of, we've had enough of experts. It's people who clap their gums and say horrendous shit that causes other people real problems. And then when you complain about it, they're like, oh, you can't say anything anymore. Well, this is one of those delicious moments. Mwah! Chef's kiss. Where you're like, oh, finally, for one of these pricks, reality came knocking, I mean, how much money do you think Vine is going to end up with, guys? How much? I mean, if 5 problematic tweets, if 5 bike nonces, the going rate for that is £75,000. Then if there's actually 10 of them and high court costs on top, I mean, we've got to be looking at like 150, maybe £170,000, right? 170 grand. Not a bad payday for old Jezza. I mean, I could do with 170 fucking grand, especially if Reform get their hands on the fiscal levers and old Trevor starts ballooning my mortgage again. How much is my mortgage statement this month? It's got, you used to owe 300,000, now it's 900 grand. Oh my God! Please! Somebody go on Twitter and call me a bike nonce 20 times. Like, a lot of you will be thinking, why did Aid get into politics, into comment, into lobbying? A lot of you might be thinking, is it because he's got a good heart? I bet it's because he's a good egg. He's got a good heart and he just wants to make the country, nay, the world, a better place. I'm sure that's what it is. And I'm here to tell you that none of that is true. None of it. And frankly, I consider that libelous. That you're defaming me versus my, public persona as an internet bastard come shit talker. You're damaging my public perception. I should take you to the High Court for even thinking it. But no, the reason that I got into lobbying, into politics, into the adversarial world of political campaigning and satire, the reason I got into this is because at some point I know someone is going to slip up. Someone's going to defame me and call me a fucking, Mike nonce or something. And then it's fucking payday, isn't it? Some content creators, some political comment types endlessly bang on about their Patreon, don't they? Not me! Some of them, I hope I get an extra 2.5 Patreons this month and I might just break it through to £107 every month in liquid cash. Not me at all. I'm playing the long game. I'm going to be as annoying as I can be to Trevor, socialist doomster and gloomster troublemaker on Twitter. That's me for the long game until somebody just slips up. I get my lawyer to send him a settlement figure. Yeah, you called him a Mike nonce 27 times. Oh, right, is that not legally protected? No, it's not. It's hugely libelous. Right, okay. What does he want? Like a public apology or so? No. He's been quite unreasonable about this. Right, okay. Well, what's the going rate for calling somebody a nonce? Right, well, weirdly, there is a precedent for this with like Joey Barton and Jeremy Vine. Yeah, Joey Barton called him a bike nonce, similar sort of ballpark, and it worked out that so he called him it 10 times, and it was £170,000 in damages. So 170 divided by 10 is 17. So 17 times 27. Because you called him the Mike... Sorry, it's really long. 17 times 27 Mike nonsense. It's just under, I think, £500,000. Right. Okay. I don't have that sort of... Yeah, I know. He says he wants your house. My fucking house! My kid's house! My family home! Yeah, we tried to talk him down, but he kept talking about the mini budget 2.0 that you've been campaigning for, and he says that his mortgage has gone through the roof and the bond market has imploded and his pension still hadn't recovered from Truss and Kwarteng. But then once Farage got his hands on the levers, it's a real mess. He's going to take your fucking house, Mick. Right. Okay. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. All I had is this house for my children. What am I going to do? And the lawyer's just like, look, it's not necessarily the end of the road. We might be able to appeal. We can appeal. But don't leave me out the garden path. Like, I need you to tell it to me straight. Like, well, I can't lose my house. I can't. It's all I've got. Like, well, what can we do? Well, it's just like, as I understand it, I mean, this was a stupid thing to do, right? You agree that, don't you, Mick? Yeah, you know, absolutely. I shouldn't have done it. I'm so sorry. No, what can we do? I've just got to keep my house. Well, I think what we do is we appeal. We go back to the High Court and we present a case that we say, this was very silly, very stupid. No rationally minded individual would ever behave in this manner, would ever have said such a thing on Twitter. You know, let alone 27 times. Absolutely. No sane individual would do this, right? Of course not. Just how do we keep my house? What do we say in the court? Well, we embark on the appeals process and we say you never ever would have behaved in this way normally or before. In fact, historically, Mick, over the years, over the decades, you've always been actually quite smart. But then you applied to become a Reform UK candidate and they wrapped the Tesco bag around your head and they starved you of oxygen for 7 minutes so you'd be oxygen starved and you'd fit in. Guys, that's it. I'll be back on Friday night with the Friday Night Live show. If you've not tuned into that yet, every Friday, 7:30, I've got the live chat going. We try to make sense of the senseless together. Will I have a guest? Probably not. I can't be bothered to fill up my diary and like chase people and remind them and put in DMs. Oh, please will you come on my podcast? Like, actually, the Friday night show is a lot of fun just with you guys at the moment. It's a bit of a riot. So I'm having a good time with it. Anyway, tune in Friday night for the Friday Night Live show. Don't forget to check out the Patreon, the YouTube community, all of that stuff. There's links in the descriptions below. And I will catch up with you all soon, probably on an alternative paper review or Friday night, whatever. Anyway, take care of yourselves. Keep it booge, keep it binfluencer, and I am out this motherfucker!